Hi, I'm Anne-Marie Mediwake. Welcome to Your Morning, the podcast. And hey, Happy New Year. We are excited to be with you through all the twists and turns that 2025 is sure to bring.
I'm Lindsey Deluce. Thanks so much for joining us. So yeah, it may be 2025, but we just can't quit 2024 yet. So on this week's episode, we're looking back at some of our favorite segments from last year.
I'm Kelsey McEwen. We're going to start off today with a lucky Taylor Swift fan who took home more than a memory from the Toronto Eras Tour stop, then from the supermarket to the black market. How daring dairy swindlers could mean a higher bill at the grocery store for you.
Okay, I want you to imagine this for a second. You're lucky enough to get tickets to see Taylor Swift's Eras Tour. And then during her performance of 22, this happens to you. I've watched this so many times. I have to say, every time she sings that song live, Taylor Swift gives her black hat to a lucky fan on night one. So on Thursday of the first of the Toronto shows, it was 11-year-old JJ Medlin from Toronto who got that honor. And guess who's in studio today? JJ Medlin is here with his mom, Jenny. Guys, when you see that video right now, I mean, are you just blown away that that happened?
Yeah, I can't believe it.
Yeah. Okay, so let's walk us through what happened. So let's walk through the day. So you wake up Thursday morning. You don't even have tickets to the show, right?
No, we don't.
How did you end up with tickets?
So I got home from school and I was like kind of bummed out that we weren't gonna get to go because my dad said if we didn't go today, we probably weren't gonna go any other days. And then my mom had told me that my sister was gonna be going and I was happy for her, but I was also sad that I wasn't going. Yeah. So then my dad told me to go to my room to get ready for my hockey game. Yeah. But instead I got dressed into my like stuff for the concert and all my friendship bracelets and stuff. And then I begged and then my parents finally got me the tickets and we ran down right to the show like 5 minutes after.
Oh my gosh.
And we just made it in time to see Gracie.
So you were supposed to go to hockey. Yeah. And your parents were like, hey, go get ready for hockey. And you come downstairs and you're wearing your Taylor Swift gear. You're like, hockey's not happening. Taylor Swift is happening. What's your jersey number, by the way?
22.
Come on. Your jersey number is 22, so you're a huge fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and have been for a long time? Okay, so then we're inside the concert. I know, Jenny, you've lost your voice a little bit. Okay, so you're at the concert, you're there. And you're singing and dancing, and you notice that somebody's staring at you, is that right?
Yeah, like I noticed that somebody's filming us, and I feel like it's kind of weird, but then I kind of give them a little stare, but then I keep going. But then it was her makeup artist, and after she filmed us, she gave me
oh yeah, what is it? She gave you something?
She gave me a Speak Now World Tour guitar pick.
Okay, and you play guitar?
Yeah.
Yeah, you do. So you were like, oh, that's cool. So that's why they were filming me, but no, there was more.
Yeah, and then 10 minutes later, like 15 minutes later, they come back and they, with like bodyguards and people, and they bring me to the front of the stage.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like freaking out.
Yeah, what were you thinking? Like, did you know that at that moment that was what was gonna happen?
Yeah, when they started walking me, I was like, I can't mess up. I can't mess up.
So then you're there and you see Taylor Swift up close and personal. In that video, and can we bring that video back? Because it looks like you're saying something to her. What are you saying to her?
So I say, she said, this is for you. And then I'm like, this is the best night of my life. And then she hugs me.
Aww.
And then we pinky promise to be best friends for life. And I tell her that my hockey number is 22.
Oh.
And then she gives me the hat.
And she gave you the hat. Have you taken it off? Nope.
Not really.
And so I understand. So you're the youngest of 4 kids. You've got 2 older sisters. So you said your sister was there.
Yeah.
So you weren't sitting with her though, right?
No.
So what did she say, Jenny, what did she say when she saw her brother was the one that was selected?
She couldn't believe it. She said she told her whole section.
I bet.
She was with her friend, just, so excited for him.
So exciting. So what is it about Taylor Swift for you that you've been such a fan for so long?
I don't know. She has like a song for every mood. And she's like kind of just like a nice person. And like, she has a song for every mood. So if you're sad, She has a song if you're happy. She has a song if you're mad. She has a song.
That's the best. Oh, look. There you go.
So we know right now butter prices are high. Not as high as last year, but they're still pretty pricey. StatsCan showing that the average price in 2019 was $3.90, while this September, butter costs $5.49. And that's down from last year's high of $6.40. Anytime there's a black market, that is a sign of a greater need. So what is driving this black market butter trend?
Well, as soon as a product goes up in price pretty rapidly, and that's the case with butter, organized crime, they get organized and they actually aim at some products that are easy to steal. The thing about butter, unlike other pricey products like meat products, for example, grocers would put electronic tags underneath pieces, but butter is expensive, but not that expensive, so it's not worth it to actually put electronic tags. And criminals actually know that. And so they'll just go after butter and they'll steal a lot of butter. So you gotta be well organized to steal $1,000 of butter and find, and of course, most groups that will actually steal butter will know who to sell it to even before stealing it.
Okay, here are my questions. First of all, how do you steal thousands of dollars worth of, like, are you stealing a flat? Is it coming off the truck? Also, the fact that organized crime is involved in butter thefts is kind of funny and not funny at the same time. And then how does the black market for butter work? Like, where are they selling it to and how much are they getting for it? What's the street value of butter?
That's a lot of questions at once. I mean, essentially, the loss prevention, or shrinkage, as we call it in the industry, is a taboo subject in the industry. We don't want to talk about it. What's new is that we're talking more about it. We know of these cases in Guelph and in Brampton as well, because I think the industry is realizing that there's a problem. I mean, prices have gone up, and there are more cases like that. Often there are internal employees involved, not always, but sometimes. And so theft can occur in the inventory, in the back store, or even on trucks as well, even before it gets to the store itself. But sometimes you'll actually see groups just go in and grab as much as they can in stores, but that's pretty rare.
So where are people buying it from? Like, how does the black market for butter operate?
Well, actually, I heard that there are some thieves selling butter on Marketplace.
Like online?
Why would you do that? Yes, online. And I'm not sure why you would do that, but typically what would happen is that you would find, honestly, restaurants, food service, bakeries, they're always looking for good deals. And if you're desperate, margins are really low. If you hear of a good deal, you'll just buy and won't ask questions. That's basically what happens sometimes.
I'm fascinated to know how this will affect the prices of butter overall. Will this cause prices to go down, or actually do the opposite and jack them up further?
Well, with butter, things are pretty regulated and pretty stable. As you know, Anne-Marie, that we do have supply management in Canada, so butter fat prices are set by the Canadian Dairy Commission. So typically it's pretty stable. We're not and that's the main driver for butter prices at retail, because butter fat, so the money that farmers get, prices have actually gone up by 40 to 50% in the last few years. That's a lot. So dairy farmers are getting more, which is why butter is more expensive. But I don't think that shrinkage, so theft, will be a factor in increasing prices.
I guess the bottom line is, why steal butter? Are the profit margins that big that it's worth it to steal it?
I guess people want butter, I guess. Fun fact for you. Actually, a lot of people are saying, well, I'm going to buy margarine because it's cheaper. It is cheaper, but margarine has actually gone up as well as butter. So that's the thing about butter, but most people really just want butter. And bakers out there who are desperate to find cheap ingredients, well, if butter's affordable, they'll get it.
You know, this year we have covered some critical moments in 2024 as Canada continues on a path toward reconciliation.
First, a landmark victory in the courtroom for a Northern First Nation winning a conviction in a criminal court by prosecuting under its own Indigenous laws.
Then, an Indigenous member of Ontario's provincial parliament tells us what it was like to finally speak in his own language at Queen's Park. Here are those interviews now.
An Ontario First Nation has now marked a provincial first, winning a conviction in court based on Indigenous laws. After police refused to charge a woman based on the Mississauga First Nations Code of Laws, the nation was able to obtain a conviction through something called a private prosecution 4 years later. Indigenous powers of self-governance are guaranteed in the Constitution. So joining us this morning for what this could mean for the future of Indigenous law in Canada is Jay Herbert, partner at Falls Law Group and legal counsel for the Mississauga First Nation in this case. Welcome to your morning.
Morning, Anne-Marie.
So the Mississauga First Nation released a statement that says, in part, this marks a major milestone in the struggle for the recognition of First Nations legal systems. What does this mean to you for progress in getting enforcement of Indigenous laws in Canada?
Well, this decision means that the Ontario court is confirming what First Nations already know, that First Nation laws are enforceable and should be prosecutable. Future is that we hope this conviction will signal to not only law enforcement, but also provincial and federal governments that laws can be prosecuted and convictions can be registered in the Ontario Court of Justice and in other courts throughout Canada. We hope that this conviction, along with others that we expect to be in the near future, will lead to legislative changes where First Nations, do not have to use the private prosecution model, but can simply rely on police enforcement of First Nation laws.
This legal system, obviously not new to First Nations here in Canada, but it might be to other people. So can you explain for us, what's the difference between Indigenous or First Nations law and other legal structures that operate in the country?
So for a functioning system of government, we need a number of things. We need laws to be passed. We need the ability to enforce those laws through policing, and we need the ability to prosecute those laws through prosecution and through a court system. And what most people don't understand in Canada is that provinces and municipalities pass these laws on a regular basis. We know a lot of them. People are well aware in Ontario of the Residential Properties Act or the Trespass to Property Act, or even things like noise bylaws. And if those things are breached, a lot of the times people can just call their local police force and expect the police to show up. And if you have a trespasser per se, the police will remove that trespasser and potentially even charge them under the provincial legislation. On First Nations, they're for federal territory, so they don't have that opportunity. And in order to bridge the gap, because First Nation laws are different, they create their own laws. And so First Nations create laws, much like provinces or municipalities do. Many of those laws and bylaws look just similar to other provinces or municipalities' laws. The only difference is that on a daily basis, First Nations cope with the issue that police aren't enforcing these laws. And so in order to bridge the gap, we have this private prosecution model.
That was a great explainer, Jay. Thank you so much. Now, the MFN used that private prosecution. Could you explain a little bit more detail what private prosecution is?
So the criminal code has an option that can be used by anyone in Canada who wants charges laid against an individual, but the police have not or will not charge them. That's called a private prosecution. So in this case, we used that option and successfully demonstrated to the court that a person had breached the Mississauga First Nations law and that those laws were valid and prosecutable. And so what happens in the private prosecution model is instead of the police handing the person a ticket or laying a charge, a justice of the peace considers some of the evidence and issues a summons to the accused, who then is brought before the Ontario Court of Justice. And in this case, we use that model and we prosecuted to a conviction.
Today, for the first time, someone will ask an official question in Ontario's Queen's Park House chambers while speaking an Indigenous language. Salma Makwa, the member of provincial parliament for the riding of Kiiwetinoong and deputy leader of the Ontario NDP, will have 10 minutes to pose a question in Oji Cree. That's his first language. It is a historic moment in the fight for Indigenous language rights in Canada. And joining us from Toronto on this momentous day is Sal himself. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and thanks for having me, Anne-Marie.
So I'm a longtime follower of you on your social media feed, and I always enjoy it very much. So I'm glad to get to talk to you today. What a moment. Your mother and other family members and friends, they are going to be in attendance to hear this today. How does it feel to be able to speak your first language in this setting?
You know, Anne-Marie, it's so unreal. It's so, I cannot believe it. But it brings warmth to my heart, what I'm going to do today, because I never thought I would be doing this. My mom will be here, my family will be here, and then the elders from my home First Nation, they're all here, and then other leaders from the other areas are here, and I think and it's there's about 100 people that will be here to witness in person, and it's not something that that I anticipated that I'd be doing, but I am here, and then I really appreciate that bringing the bringing the story to this place, and so I'm going to have 10 minutes before question period where I will be able to speak my language, and then
what will you say?
I think I want to be able to acknowledge the people that that lost their language. There's so many of us, so many indigenous people that lost their language because they weren't allowed to speak their language in Indian residential schools. They were never allowed. There's others that that have lost their language. There's young people that have lost their language, and but also I want to be able to acknowledge as well, the carriers of the language. And I think the carriers are the ones that are still speaking, no matter whatever colonial institutions that they were trying to get rid of the language, get rid of us, and and that's what it means for me. And I think I want to be able to acknowledge that and pave a way so our languages don't become extinct. So that's very important.
I always find it very powerful, moving even, to hear Indigenous language spoken in those spaces. When you talk about the legacy of residential schools, the mandate of which was to kill the Indian in the child, to now have an OG Cree language spoken out loud from the seat of power in this province, it really is quite a moment. All of this came about from some planning that you did with Government House Leader Paul Calandra and members of the Progressive Conservatives. You are part of the Ontario New Democratic Party. What kind of hope does this rule change give you for cooperation between all the parties when it comes to important issues like this?
I think when we work together, when we listen to each other, we can make a lot of changes. And I think that's one of the things that happened with the Government House Leader is, when I talked to him about, this is what happens, and we didn't agree at the beginning, but I think when we found out the details of the standing orders, like that I'm not allowed to speak, it took them 1 week to be able to make changes. And I think, and I allowed it for, for 2 months for the broadcasting to be able to plan out on how it's going to roll out when we actually get on the floor today at 10:30. And the unique thing about it today too is it's my mom's birthday.
Oh.
She's turning 79, and so I'm going to wish her happy birthday when I'm on the floor in my language.
I was thinking, I can see the smile on your face, how excited you are. And I was thinking about your mom, and you talk about language carriers. I imagine that your mom is that as well. Has she told you what it means to her, not just because it's her birthday, but because it is the language that her son is speaking from the floor of Ontario's Queen's Park?
Yeah, she doesn't know how important my life and my language, my identity is, on the way she raised me. And it was her and my late dad, they're the ones that took me out on the land. And that's where I was able to keep the language. There was no way that the residential school would be able to take away the language, because it was already, from growing up, it was already instilled in there. And I think that's, she knows that. I told her that, and I think that's something that, she's very happy. She's very happy to be here, and so she's going to enjoy this.
It makes me think of that saying, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams, and I think you are living that today. Saul Mamakwa, thank you so much for joining us today. Look forward to hearing from you later.
Okay, thanks for having me. Have a good day. Good day.
Good day to you, too. Thanks for listening to Your Morning, the podcast. Every week, we bring you some of the most interesting conversations from the show on a wide variety of topics. Speaking of the show, you can always join us live weekdays, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, 7 to 10 a.m. Atlantic on CTV CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Next up on Your Morning, the podcast, saving lives and sacrificing them.
So first we hear from the man who may have worn the very first neck guard on the ice. He shared his thoughts about how critical that little piece of equipment has been for protecting generations of athletes.
Then on the podcast, we'll dive into a Canadian documentary showing how desperate people are sacrificing their bodies to medical science for money. Those interviews now.
I'm going to take you back to 1975. That's when Kim Crouch was injured in a junior hockey game. His neck was cut so deep he needed 3 hours of emergency surgery. And remarkably, he returned to the ice a month later wearing what may have been the first ever neck guard. Kim Crouch is joining us this morning from Whitby. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lindsay.
So I just mentioned your history, that you were severely injured in a hockey game almost 50 years ago. What can you share with us about what happened?
I was playing goal for the Markham Waxers of the Provincial Junior A. I raced out of the net to smother a loose puck, and as I did, two players went over me, and one of their skates cut me on the side of the neck.
Did you know what had happened?
Not immediately. I sat up. The trainer, Joe Piccinini, had witnessed the accident and was at my side in seconds and started to apply pressure on the wound to try and stem the flow of blood. He kept me calm and stayed with me right to the hospital after I was injured.
Unbelievable. I hear that you lost a third of your blood. A third?
Yes, that's what the doctors determined after performing the surgery. There was damage done to my nerves. That's why my voice is what you hear. But I got back on the ice and continued to play right up into my 60s. So I still was able to perform with my neck guard, and that was my story.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. So you make this remarkable recovery. You want to get back on the ice, and it's your dad, Ed, that said, wait a second, you need to be protected out there. So he decided to make a neck guard for you. Tell us about that.
That's correct. When I was still in the hospital, my dad came in to visit and asked me if I wanted to continue to play. Being 18 years old, I said, oh yeah, let's do it. So within a short period of time, he had a local seamstress put together a prototype, and I was back on the ice with my neck guard. As a result of it being front page news, the public started to inquire about purchasing neck guards, and that was the start of the business.
That was the start of your family business. What was the reaction when you started wearing the guard?
The reaction at first, it was slow for people to catch on. Neck guards didn't become mandatory until 1993 for minor hockey players. So it was a long stretch trying to get people aware of the availability of the neck guard and its importance.
Yeah, you mentioned so minor league hockey players in this country have had to wear neck guards since '93. You just mentioned that. There's still no mandate in the NHL. How does it feel to know that mandating neck guards, it's still up for debate in some leagues?
Well, I played long enough to know how the attitudes of players, their reluctance to wear something they feel may be hot or uncomfortable. But the importance of it is what it's really providing, and that is covering an area of your body that's very vulnerable to an injury that is something that needs quick attention or is definitely fatal, potentially a fatal injury.
Kim Crouch, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for sharing your story with us.
My pleasure, Lindsay.
All right, you take care.
The latest project in a catalog of award-winning documentaries from Habiba Noshin is a shocking documentary following two men participating in human drug trials. Take a look.
When I first started doing clinical trials, the waiver that you signed, it said, you could die and, the company wouldn't be liable. And I was like, that seems nuts, but Seems like easy money and it should be fine.
The story follows the emotional toll they face, giving us at times a heartbreaking glimpse into who the people in these human drug trials are and the industry behind it. Joining us this morning is the filmmaker Habiba Nosheen. Great to have you in studio.
Thank you for having me.
So we all take medications. Yeah. We've all taken drugs. You look at the package, you see some side effects listed on there. And I don't know that I've ever stopped to think, how do they know that?
Yeah.
There's a whole industry behind this. We know that these human drug trials happen. Many of these trials are accompanied by unpleasant side effects, long-term health risks. What is it about these trials that draws people in, like the two people in your documentary, to participate?
I mean, the pharmaceutical industry would like you to believe that people do this because they want to help promote science. They do this from the goodness of their heart because they want to bring life-saving drugs to the market. But when you actually talk to people, it's a paycheck for them. They're really honest about it. They need this money. They're renting out their bodies for drug testing because for many of them, including people living in Canada, it's hard to make ends meet, and their body is something that they can sell.
Well, and just to be clear, they're not making a ton of money doing this. They are scraping together, trying to make ends meet, trying to just pay their rent and make a living. There's a line in the documentary where it says this is really focusing on our poor population, on people who are really vulnerable as it is, and they are the ones who are participating.
Yeah, I mean, the people we featured in our documentary, they have a hard time keeping down a minimum wage job, basically, because they say, we can get a minimum wage job, but we're not getting enough hours to cobble up 40 hours a week, so I need to sell my body in order to pay my rent, get food on the table.
So take us through a typical trial. What are the conditions like that these people are participating within?
Yeah, so what most people don't know is that our drug testing is done in phases. And the first phase, before a drug can go on the market and be tried on people, or not, before the drug can be tried on people who actually have the disease that the drug is trying to cure, we actually test it on people who don't have the disease. We test it on healthy people, and we pay people to do that. So that's where this industry has sort of propped up, where we're paying healthy people to test the medication to see if it's safe or not. And because we're paying people, it ends up being people who have very little means saying, yeah, sure, I'll take the money, put the drug in me, and I'll tell you what the side effects are. So that's what the focus of the documentary is, that population that first test the drug that has never been tested in human most of the time, and they're the ones that are going first to say, yeah, put it in me, and I'll tell you what happens.
And it's not like they're staying in like swanky hotels while they're doing this. What are the conditions like?
So most of them live inside the facility for at least portions of the time. That's pretty typical. In one case, one of the participants we followed, he's inside a facility for 2 months. You walk in, and you don't go out for 2 months. There are scenarios where they may take you for a little walk in the parking lot for 15 minutes a day. But for most of the time, outside the bathroom and the bedrooms, there are cameras everywhere. Often if it's like a diet restricted trial, they're giving you the food. You must eat all the food that's on your plate. You have 30 minutes to eat it. They're very strict regulation. And one of the participants in the film called it drug jail. And I think that's an adequate description of what that's like. You're often staying in a large room with bunk beds with, say, 10 to 12 other people. Very limited privacy.
When we look at kind of outside of the industry, what kind of regulation is there that's keeping an eye on what's happening here and protecting the people who are participating in these?
That was really eye-opening. We just assumed that in the US, it's FDA, and in Canada, it's Health Canada watching over this and seeing what's happening. But what we learned was, over the years, more and more, these drug trials have moved out of university settings and more into the private sectors because for the pharma company, the universities just weren't fast enough. We wanted drugs. There was a demand for drugs. The universities don't move fast. So in the last 20 years, we've seen an increase of more and more drug testing happening in the private sector, but our oversight system is still a holdover for when it was happening in universities. So it's not being monitored as well as it should be.
Our final interview today is a remarkable story of strength and perseverance.
A female journalist fled Afghanistan when the Taliban retook power, only to join us 3 years later as a new Canadian university graduate. Here's our interview with her now.
Only 3 years ago, Farida Nexad made the harrowing decision to flee Afghanistan as the capital fell to the Taliban. With her daughter in tow, she then came to Canada, and despite many challenges, she pursued an education. And yesterday, Farida crossed the convocation stage at Carleton University, where she had earned her Master of Journalism degree. The occasion comes just days before World Refugee Day, and Farida is joining us this morning from Ottawa. First of all, congratulations, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Emery, and all other those there watching us.
When you fled Afghanistan 3 years ago, you had a really difficult decision to make, because not only were you leaving behind your family and this place that you loved, students and fellow journalists, but you also left behind your husband. And I understand you were able to reunite with him earlier this year. He was at your convocation yesterday. What does that moment mean to you?
To be honest, yeah, it was not easy. It was so hard for me. But despite of all challenge, I was very excited for this day because we had Eid happiness, more than Eid. We have our husbands because my daughter was very happy. And also we had the opportunity to go and celebrate and such great achievements for me with my husband.
What has your experience been like in Canada from arrival until this graduation?
To be honest, the experiences, like, you know, if I say in terms of being happy, in terms of being stressed, and so, but of course the experience, which when I compare right now myself, I feel really happy because I find another family. Of course, I left my family behind, but here, this family, this community from Canadian Connection team, which is a very great volunteer woman, started to finish to the Carleton University. So it is a great achievement and great experience with different great people because they were very understanding, they were very kind, and they really respected because of my experience and my background. And this was the opportunity and this was the experience that gave me back to, I worked sometime at Carleton University after my work. This institution, I just started my academic study, which is a great achievement, a dream for me. Mm-hmm. So this is a lot of experience and being another side for my daughter, a safe place for my daughter to study. Yeah. Also, you know, while in Afghanistan, unfortunately, the girls are stopped from education, mm-hmm. which is a fundamental right. So all these things, when I compare one side, we lost everything, but another side, I have lots of experience because of my these achievements. It means, yeah.
You had this graduation yesterday, but you know we should remind everybody that you've been working as a journalist for 20 years. In 2017, in fact, you founded the Protection of Afghan Women Journalists. You covered things like domestic violence. You know, and you think about the young women who are studying and the journalists who are still back in Afghanistan. It must have been such a difficult decision to leave them, especially you know, the work that you'd been doing with them. How are they doing now, and how are you planning to continue helping them?
Yeah, it is the part of hard time for me because all the time I was very supportive. I was like, I had a matric role, like as a motherhood. All the time I tried to be protective for them or supportive for them. And unfortunately, when the situation changed, I could, by assistance and help of IFG and RSF, evacuated them. I'm very thankful from this organization, but you know, still I have this. I'm very happy that there are some organizations, they are still working for the supporting of journalists and scholars, which was really the scholars at risk. I'm very thankful from the government of Canada that they make this opportunity, they supported like me. And this is a big opportunity for those people like with the full of experience coming. Suddenly they lost everything, and they provide such a great opportunity, facilities, and they are giving something like, courage. And you just have the moral and courage to continue your experience. It means with your experience and with your knowledge in other country, and I'm very thankful for that. And for those they left behind, I'm still committed. Because I was busy, I'm still in contact with them every I should say not every day, because currently I was busy, but I'm regularly with them. I am regularly in contact because we had around 400 members. And more or less more than 50 years currently in Afghanistan. And unfortunately, but I'm still committed. If I find any opportunity, I'm still asking from the organization. I'm looking for the support of them, either inside in Afghanistan, or if they're still in risk, I will try to find a way that and communicate that if I still could have some part of for their safe evacuation.
Yeah. Farida, congratulations once again. I want to thank you not only for all your achievements, but the work that you continue to do for the women back in Afghanistan. Thank you for today.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks for being with us today.
For more great conversations, download or hit subscribe to Your Morning, the podcast on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
And don't forget, watch us live weekday mornings on CTV, CTV News Channel, or on your CTV News app. Start your morning with us.